Hello, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. As mentioned, my name is Mark Hahnel. I'm the founder of Figshare, which is a generalist repository, and it is one of the repositories in Gray, the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative. I am the representative who is here lucky enough to come and talk, because there's a lot of people who work for all of these different repositories, and I'm the only one from Liverpool. So I am the most excited to be here. In 14 years of running Figshare, I've never been to a conference in Liverpool, and I get to see my mum. So I'll be talking about Coopetition as a catalyst for researcher engagement with open data. For those who don't know what Coopetition is, we've got a definition. We'll get to that. I'm going to talk about the mission of Gray, the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative. I think it's very relevant and very, very ahead of its time in terms of getting infrastructures to work together. It's almost the insight to the perturbations, was it, that might be coming down the line. So it's good that we've got this resilience built in. I'll be talking about the Coopetition model itself, the accomplishments. And I personally, for the last decade exactly, we've been doing a State of Open Data report, trying to look at what incentivizes researchers to share their data in a view to try and get them to share more of it. And so I'll be talking about how Gray is helping with common metrics and why I think that's important. So, as I mentioned, there are 7 generalist repositories in the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative. It's an other transaction award funded by the NIH, and it aims to develop collaborative approaches for data management and sharing through the inclusion of generalist repositories in the NIH data ecosystem. And we've heard a lot today from a lot of the other parts of the NIH data ecosystem. And I personally feel if we had a subject-specific repository for everything, that would be a better setup, but we don't. So we can talk about how we can make good with what we have and aim to do better in the future. So Gray was set up to establish a common set of cohesive and consistent capabilities, services, metrics, and social infrastructure across the generalist repositories, and also to raise awareness and help researchers adopt FAIR principles to better share and reuse data. We're in year 4 of the 4 years of funding, 2025-26. So it was ahead of the NIH data sharing mandate policy that came into effect in 2023. And I think a lot of it is, if we are recommending researchers to go and use different tools, we have to make sure that they're at least up to a certain level and up to and working together to make things better. So the repositories, the 7 repositories I mentioned, you may have heard of some of them, you may have heard of all of them. They have different models, right? Figshare is a commercial entity. Zenodo is not a commercial entity, it's a not-for-profit. If Zenodo was around when I started Figshare, there wouldn't be a Figshare, but and each of them have different setups. So you pay to use Dryad, and they all have, some are open source, some are not open source. So I've been going around doing conferences for a long time where I'd see folks who worked in the exact same job as me, Lars from Zenodo, I'd see all the time. But we would never talk about, what are you building? How can we build this together? Should we just all recreate the wheel? And we did that for a long time. But we all know that what the best practices are, but in a new and evolving space, these best practices kind of sneak up on you. And so it's really interesting to see. You hear a lot of the times that the people who shout loudest about their new identifier system in your ear might get it implemented at Figshare, but it's not going to get it implemented across all of the different repositories, because people will only implement the ones that are most important as we move along. So RAW is one of them, ORCID is one of them, DataCite is one of them. We try and make good use of the existing open infrastructure in a way that supports them, but also builds in that resilience across all of the different workflows. So these are the objectives. There's working groups for each of them with members from different repositories. What's very nice about this from the NIH is that it supports discovery of NIH-funded data. And by doing that, you kind of support discovery of all funded data and different funders. So big kudos to the NIH for funding it. We talk about QA and QC. What happens when in a changing world when everything on the internet is AI generated? What does that mean for academic content? How do we curate in some level? Implementing open metrics. I think the open data space is moving from, well, all societal changes in academia. You have policy, compliance, policy, mandate, compliance, measurement, right? So we have the policy, but unless you can have the measurement at the end of it, it's very hard to incentivize researchers by saying, you'll get more impact, you'll have more credit. We're going to force the AI models to cite you at some point. So it's a fast moving space, but in that there is this commitment to coopetition. Coopetition is cooperation and competition. I think it's a common word now, but that might be I've just been in too many grey meetings. No, it's new. Okay, people shaking their heads. The easiest way to understand it is this thing on the left, which is there's a value line. So we all, as I say, have different models and different ways in which we work. Speaking my own shop, Figshare's sustainability model is we build repositories for universities and funders and other folks. And so the generalist free repository is just kind of, it just sits there and it gets developed as the other bits get developed. Whereas Zenodo is just for end users. And you might be competing with some folks. So I can tell you, it's very open these days, which is very nice, that if a university is looking for a repository, a data repository, they might come to Figshare, they might go to Dataverse, they might go to Mendeley Data, right? So you've got that competition, but there's some stuff that all of them need to have. And so let's just talk about all the stuff that they need to have. And you don't need to share what's happening at Elsevier with that really cool thing you're building that's going to make them win all the repositories, right? So you cooperate on common features and you compete in everything above that line. And so it's all about talking what's going on below the line. And there's so many, it's a different world to move into if you're in the startup, move fast, break things space. And then you move into the let's work as a committee and agree on things. So it feels like it's slowing things down. But again, I like the idea that things are slow, the space has advanced enough that it's slowed down to consider all of the things that are really, really important and that we all agree we need persistent identifiers for the things that are published. We need the metadata to be pushed to all of these different places. We need the metadata to be under this standard. So it is actually a lot faster to move the under the line stuff across all of these repositories. You have volunteers who run the Gray project management each year. And then you have some system level synergies through Coopetition. So there's efficient allocation of time and resources. So instead of covering the 3 or 5 people from Figshare who are working directly in Gray, don't have to think about all of these different objectives. You go along to, you have representation in all of them, and you make sure that you're representing your repository, and you come back and say, this is what we've agreed. We're going to go move forward this way as a community. So it saves you a lot of time that way. You don't have to think about everything individually. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. There's a lot of use cases around enhanced data sharing and discovery because of this. As I mentioned, by all adhering to similar ways of working, you can start having better search. Again, the NIH funded it. They want to find out about all the data sets that they fund. So implementation of things like Make Data Count and the data site usage tracker means we're starting to move to a way in which you can have apples to apples comparisons, and all Gray repositories have implemented or are working towards raw IDs. I recently was in charge of doing the survey of how all of the different repositories worked with ORCID. And they all work with ORCID, and they've all implemented it as the identifier for individuals, and none of them did it in the same way. Of the 7, there was not 2 repositories that did it the same way. And the variables are things like, do you allow people to automatically push their metadata, or do you allow them to toggle that off? Is it one author? Is it all authors? Do you enforce the authorization that is a real ORCID? And so it's just, I like to think of it as policy compliant infrastructure. Researchers don't care about that. They just want to have a nice interface in order to tick this box and move forward. So how can we make it so we get the best stuff out of them? I'll speed up a little bit because I talk too much. Implications for the larger data sharing landscape. We heard the talk before where you have the generalist repositories over here. I like to think of it like this. The generalist repositories will catch everything. Wellcome Trust used to call them orphan repositories, which I don't like, but we'll catch everything. And then the subject-specific repositories have really great metadata around a field. And like I said at the beginning, if every subject had a subject-specific repository, that would be great. We're not there yet, and I think we need to fill the middle gap. I think we need to start having thematic repositories around certain subjects that aren't quite GenBank, but they might be cancer, I don't know. But what this means is by agreeing to these standards and releasing all of this information to the wider world, I do think in putting the subject-specific repositories up here, I do think we also need to hold everybody to the same level of accountability. And we do need to say there are some improvements that you could be making here that maybe under the line there you're not doing. Why is your API not doing this? Why is your metadata not going to these different places? So I think there can be some accountability there. And again, institutional repositories pick up because a lot of them use this infrastructure. So we have metadata recommendations. We have version 1. I was just the chair of the one that came out with version 2. Enforcing good metadata is hard. In generalist repositories, a lot of things aren't curated. So we still have a lot of researchers calling datasets dataset, my dataset, John Smith's dataset for his paper. I do think there's an interesting world ahead of us where we ask AI to help us with this. And so it's a great example of, okay, well, instead of Figshare going and doing an AI strategy and Zenodo going and doing an AI strategy, what's one that works for everyone in a way that is going to create accurate metadata and isn't going to just churn out non-new knowledge. So version 2 coming soon. If you run a subject-specific repository, look at it, see if you are doing well on it. In terms of why this is useful, there's Ted Huberman's metadata game changers, where he can come along and say, I'm going to programmatically look and see how fair all of your research is. And I'm using the word fair as it's a very loose term, but you can start to automate and see, this is what the bots think of your data sets as a whole, as a repository. So you can start to see the gaps and see who's doing something well, who's doing something, if you've got a low score on something, go and speak to the repository that's got a high score on something, see how they're doing well. So you can start to programmatically look at this. In terms of the data sites is the place where all of this information flows into. And so there's new data sites, dashboards coming out that will be able to slice and dice this data, again, expose it in a way that people can look at, people can build on top of it and make data more discoverable. It does include common metrics across things, which is my own personal exciting space. I think downloads as a usage metric for a repository are very difficult these days because they've all got 10 times as many downloads as they had 2 years ago. So we're all doing fantastically, right? But if everything goes, it's just everything's getting bigger. It's not related, right? So the bots are eating everything. But we do track citations using our sister organization Dimensions. We do track altmetrics using our sister organization Altmetric, but that's irrelevant if folks like the NIH can't say, okay, well, what's the citation count for that data set in Dataverse using the exact same method? So this is something that on the one hand is above the line, but on the other hand needs to be, if we want to go from policy to mandate to measurement, policy to mandate to compliance to measurement, we need to have consistency. And so open things like the make data count data citation corpus allows us to do this. And we can start tracking, every funder tends to go up and to the right, but we can start tracking which funders are doing better than others and start saying, Wellcome Trust is doing really well. What are they doing different to other funders? I brought it very local, 3 local universities. We can say, this is the number of papers that coming from your university that link to a data set as a percentage. So, 2010, it was all 0 to 3, and now it's up at 10. So it's moving, but it could be moving faster. Things like the NIH mandates, I think, are going to cause a huge uptick on this. And so if we want to be able to do things like this, the systems need to work together. The systems can't go to conferences and not talk to each other. The systems need to be as open about all of these things as possible. And so the Coopetition model is allowing new ways for researchers to get a standard experience no matter where they go, and the researchers to be rewarded with the same amount of exposure, the same amount of ways to track the metrics. I know this has been shared, the 2022 version, so I haven't gone past 2022 because the mandate came out in 2023. I don't know if that's been made public before. And we see the things like the S-Index, which is coming out from the National Cancer Institute, which is looking at ways to reward data sharing excellence, promoting a new metric for assessing how effectively researchers share valuable data, driving a culture of openness in science. That's being awarded next year. So I think we're going to get to the end of that runway of policy, mandate, measurement. And so all of this stuff is openly available. You can go to these QR codes. You can, if you search Gray NIH, you'll find it as well. A great thing about doing everything in the open, everything's on GitHub. If you're looking to do similar things and you don't want to reinvent the wheel, that's a place where you can go to find some resources. If you have ideas about things that you want to see in generalist repositories, you can come and lobby individual ones of us, and we'll go and take it to the much wider group, which is harder to get in, and that's the way it should be. That's everything for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions?
Hi, thanks a lot for the talk. So collectively, how do you decide what to compete on and what to collaborate on?
Yeah, it's just a very good democratic process. We all get together and we decide with the NIH, we decide what are the things they want, what are the things that everybody needs to work on. And you don't go as far as you want sometimes. So you may have noticed I'm big on metrics. And there was a working group to look at citations. And I was hoping we'd get to a standardized way of doing citation counts. And we got to a standardized way of defining what a citation is, right? So baby steps. And that's how it works with different things. And then we have things like a parking lot, because there's too much to do. So we have a standard yearly setup of these are the things we're all agreeing to. And then you commit to do product development to get there. And so some of the more obvious things like implementation of RAWs, we've all done now. And as I just mentioned with ORCID, we've all got good intentions. We've all now got a good, better, best plan of attack. And so even if the funding goes away, we know what we should be doing to work together good towards going forward as well. There's not too many arguments. It's not, it's the thing where, you might have someone come along and say, I have this new identifier that you should all be implementing. And it's you might have some people that feel stronger than others, but it's hard to get to the top of that list right now.
So is it a situation where the NIH says, I agree on certain things, please go and sort out amongst yourselves how they're going to be done, and do some things also come up from the repositories themselves, like actually we'd like to cooperate on this?
Yeah, definitely things come up from the repositories themselves. But I mean, the structure at the beginning with these different things. So, conduct outreach. We've got to come up with a plan to conduct outreach. Doing some right now. And so we can be helped along, but it's pretty freeform how that outreach is done. It can be webinars. The repositories themselves come up with that plan. But support of discovery of NIH funded data, as I say, they are paying for it. It's fantastic. We have to adhere to the making sure that we're ticking those boxes for the people who are paying for the work to be done, because it's good that somebody stepped up.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again so much.